3 years ago, a man arrived in America with 2 suitcases, a scholarship, and a dream so big it kept him awake at night. 6 months later, he was sleeping inside his car outside a gas station, terrified to answer phone calls from home. He thought moving to the USA would save his life. Instead, it almost destroyed it. But nobody knew what was really happening. His name was Daniel, 26 years old, quiet, smart, hopeful, the kind of guy who believed hard work could fix anything. When his plane landed in New York, he stared out the window and whispered, "This is where everything changes." And he was right, just not the way he imagined. Because the first warning came faster than anyone expected. First, life looked perfect online. Smiling selfies, fancy coffee shops, bright city lights. Everyone back home thought Daniel was winning. But behind every photo was panic. Rent was crushing him. Bills kept stacking up. And every night, he heard the same question inside his head. What if I made the biggest mistake of my life? But that fear was only the beginning. One cold night, Daniel sat alone in a tiny apartment with no furniture except a mattress on the floor. His bank account showed $17. 17. He stared at the screen for almost an hour. Then his phone buzzed. It was his mother asking if he was happy. He lied. And that single lie changed everything. Before we go deeper, take 1 second to like this video and subscribe. Because stories like this are happening to people all across America right now. And most never talk about it. Share this with someone who feels lost, overwhelmed, or alone. Because what Daniel discovered next might help more people than anyone realizes. The next morning, Daniel walked through crowded streets filled with strangers moving like machines. Thousands of people around him. Yet he had never felt more invisible. Have you ever stood in a crowd and still felt completely alone? That's when he noticed something disturbing about the people around him. Nobody made eye contact. Nobody slowed down. Everyone looked exhausted, smiling on the outside, empty on the inside. Daniel started wondering if the American dream was just a performance people forced themselves to believe. But one conversation inside a subway station shattered him completely. An older man sitting near the train suddenly looked at Daniel and said, "You look lost." Daniel froze. He never spoke to strangers. But somehow, this man saw right through him in seconds. Then the stranger whispered something Daniel would never forget. "America can give you everything, while quietly taking your soul." And that's when the nightmare truly began. Days turned into weeks. Daniel stopped sleeping properly. He worked 2 jobs, cheap noodles every night, smiled during video calls home. But inside he was breaking apart. Why didn't anyone talk about this side of America? Why did social media hide the loneliness? Then came the first twist no one saw coming. Daniel lost his job without warning. Just like that. One email. No explanation. No backup plan. No savings. He sat in silence staring at the message while snow fell outside his apartment window. And suddenly, the city that once looked magical felt cold. Almost hostile. But something even stranger happened that same night. At 2:13 a.m., Daniel received a text from an unknown number. "Don't trust the image people sell you." No name, no context, just that sentence. First he thought it was spam. But minutes later another message arrived. "You're not the only one pretending to survive." Who was sending these messages? And how did they know his secret? Daniel became obsessed. He reread the texts over and over. Was someone watching him? Was this a coincidence? Or had somebody experienced the same darkness before him? Then he clicked the sender's profile picture. And his blood ran cold. Because he recognized the face instantly. It was Ethan, his college friend. The same Ethan who disappeared from social media 8 months earlier. Everyone assumed he moved away. But Daniel remembered something disturbing. Ethan once told him America was eating him alive. And now, somehow, Ethan was trying to warn him. But the truth behind Ethan's disappearance was far worse. Daniel tracked down Ethan's last known address. The apartment building looked abandoned. Windows cracked. Always dark. Neighbors avoided eye contact when he mentioned Ethan's name. One woman finally whispered, "He changed after losing everything." Changed how? Nobody would explain. Then Daniel found something hidden inside Ethan's mailbox. A notebook, filled with frantic writing. Pages covered in phrases like, "They tell you to hustle until you forget who you are. Everyone here is lonely but nobody admits it." And one sentence circled again and again. "If you feel lost in America, it's not because you failed." Daniel suddenly realized he wasn't alone. But that revelation uncovered something terrifying. The notebook described people working non-stop while silently collapsing inside. Students, immigrants, workers, dreamers, all chasing success while losing peace, relationships, and sleep. Was this the hidden epidemic nobody talked about? Daniel couldn't stop reading until he reached the final page. And everything changed instantly. The final page had an address written in red ink. No explanation, just a location and a time, Friday, midnight. Daniel knew it sounded insane, but something deep inside pushed him to go. Maybe he wanted answers. Maybe he wanted hope. Or maybe he had already reached his breaking point. Friday night arrived. Rain poured across empty streets as Daniel followed GPS directions into an industrial part of the city. No lights, no traffic, just silence. Then he saw the building. An old warehouse with one dim light glowing inside. And suddenly, his phone lost signal completely. Daniel stepped inside carefully. About 20 people sat quietly in folding chairs. Different ages, different backgrounds. Yet every face looked emotionally exhausted. Nobody spoke for nearly a minute. Then a woman stood up and asked a question that hit Daniel like a punch. "How many of you came to America searching for happiness and found emptiness instead?" Almost every hand rose slowly. One by one, people shared their stories. A nurse drowning in debt. A student hiding depression from family overseas. A businessman who made money but lost his marriage. Daniel realized something shocking. Everyone looked successful online. But behind closed doors, many were barely surviving emotionally. And then came the third twist nobody expected. The meeting wasn't therapy. It wasn't a support group. It was started by Ethan. Yes, the same Ethan everyone thought disappeared. But Ethan never vanished. He walked away from the fake life he was performing online. And when Daniel finally saw him enter the room, he barely recognized him. Ethan looked calmer, healthier, different. He smiled at Daniel and said, "I almost destroyed myself trying to impress people who never cared." The room fell silent. Then Ethan revealed something even more disturbing. He said the loneliest people in America often look the most successful. Luxury apartments, expensive clothes, perfect Instagram stories. Ethan explained how many people were trapped in invisible emotional prisons built from comparison, pressure, and fear. People aren't just chasing money, he said. They're chasing validation. And suddenly Daniel understood why he had been suffering all along. For the first time in months, Daniel admitted the truth out loud. "I'm scared." Those two words nearly broke him. But instead of judging him, the room nodded with understanding. Some people even cried quietly. And that's when Daniel discovered the one thing he had been missing since arriving in America. Connection. Real human connection. Not followers, not likes, not fake smiles for social media. Real conversations. Real honesty. Daniel realized he spent months trying to appear strong while silently collapsing inside. Have we all become too afraid to admit when we're struggling? But Ethan still had one final revelation. Ethan walked toward a whiteboard and wrote 3 sentences. "You are not behind. You are not weak. You do not need to prove your worth by suffering." The room became completely silent. Because deep down, everyone there needed to hear those words more than anything else. Daniel left the warehouse just before sunrise. The city looked different now. Not because America had changed, but because he finally understood the truth nobody talks about. Being lost doesn't mean your life is over. Sometimes it means your soul is demanding a different direction. But the story wasn't finished yet. Weeks later, Daniel found a smaller apartment, a stable job, and something far more valuable than success: peace. He stopped pretending online, stopped comparing himself to strangers, and strangely, the moment he stopped chasing perfection, his life slowly improved. But one unanswered mystery still haunted him. Why were so many people suffering silently? Why did nobody warn newcomers about the emotional cost of chasing endless success? Maybe because admitting the truth feels dangerous. Maybe because society rewards appearances more than honesty. Or maybe people are terrified others will see how broken they really feel. Then Daniel remembered the first text Ethan sent him. Don't trust the image people sell you. Finally, he understood. The greatest illusion wasn't America itself. It was the belief that everyone else had life figured out while you alone were struggling. And once that illusion shattered, everything changed forever. So if you're sitting alone tonight feeling lost, overwhelmed, or disconnected, maybe you're not failing at life. Maybe you're finally seeing through the illusion. But here's the terrifying question nobody wants to ask. If millions of people are secretly unhappy while pretending to be okay, then what happens when the pretending finally stops? 3 months after that warehouse meeting, Daniel started noticing things he had ignored before. The tired eyes behind forced smiles. The silence between coworkers during lunch breaks. The way people apologized for resting, as if exhaustion had become normal. America moved fast. Almost too fast. And Daniel began wondering who created this race in the first place. One evening, Daniel received another message from Ethan. Come back tonight. There's something you need to see. No explanation. No details. Daniel hesitated. Part of him feared getting pulled deeper into something dangerous. But another part knew his life had already changed because of Ethan once before. And this time, the truth waiting for him was even darker. The warehouse looked different that night. More people. More tension. Some whispered nervously. Others stared at the floor in silence. Then Daniel noticed a camera set up in the corner. Was someone recording these meetings? Before he could ask, Ethan stepped forward and locked the door behind him. And suddenly the room went completely quiet. Ethan revealed a stack of printed photographs. At first glance, they looked normal. Smiling families, luxury vacations, crowded parties. But then he flipped the pictures over. Every single one had handwritten notes describing depression, panic attacks, burnout, or loneliness. Daniel felt chills run down his spine. How many people were hiding pain behind perfect photos? A woman named Sophia finally stood up trembling. She looked confident, polished, successful. But her voice cracked instantly. I have 200,000 followers, she whispered. And nobody knows I cry every night. The room fell silent. Who could she really trust if even fame couldn't save her from feeling empty? Daniel suddenly understood something terrifying. People weren't only pretending for others. They were pretending for themselves. Every filtered photo, every motivational caption, every fake smile. 'Twas armor. And the heavier that armor became, the harder it was to breathe underneath it. But Ethan still hadn't explained why everyone was gathered there that night. Then Ethan turned on a projector. A massive graph appeared on the wall showing rising anxiety, depression, and isolation across the country over the last decade. More connected online. More disconnected emotionally. How did we get here? Someone asked softly. Ethan stared at the screen for several seconds before answering. Because loneliness became profitable. The room erupted with confusion. Profitable. What did that even mean? Ethan explained how companies, platforms, and influencers constantly pushed people to compare themselves to impossible standards. Pay more. Work harder. Hustle longer. Smile brighter. The cycle never ended. And Daniel realized something horrifying. He had been trapped inside that machine the entire time. 4 years. Daniel believed success would finally make him feel enough. Enough money, enough status, enough approval. But the finish line kept moving further away. Have you ever chased something so hard, only to feel emptier after reaching it? That question hit the room like a storm, because everyone there knew exactly what he meant. Then the power suddenly shut off. Darkness swallowed the warehouse instantly. Several people gasped. Somebody dropped a chair. Daniel's heart pounded violently as footsteps echoed somewhere near the entrance. Who was out there? And why did Ethan suddenly look genuinely afraid for the first time? Emergency lights flickered on dimly. Ethan stared toward the door and whispered, "They found us." Daniel froze. "They?" But before Ethan could answer, loud banging shook the metal entrance. The entire room panicked. And that's when Daniel realized this wasn't just a support group anymore. People rushed toward exits while Ethan tried calming everyone down. "No phones," he shouted. "Nobody post anything online." Why was he so worried about exposure? Daniel's mind raced wildly. Had Ethan uncovered something bigger than emotional burnout? Something powerful people wanted hidden? Then Ethan grabbed Daniel's arm and pulled him aside. "There's something I never told you," Ethan said breathlessly. "I used to work for a marketing company." Daniel frowned. "What does that have to do with any of this?" Ethan looked devastated. "Because we were trained to keep people insecure. Insecurity keeps people consuming. And suddenly every advertisement, every comparison, every pressure-filled moment started making horrifying sense." Ethan explained how algorithms rewarded outrage, envy, and emotional dependency. The more people doubted themselves, the longer they stayed online searching for validation. It wasn't random. It was engineered attention. Daniel felt sick hearing it. Was modern loneliness partly manufactured? And if so, how could anyone escape it? Outside, the banging finally stopped. The warehouse became eerily quiet again. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Then an older man near the back whispered, "Maybe the scariest part isn't that the system is broken." Everyone looked at him. He swallowed hard before finishing the sentence. "Maybe it's working exactly as intended." Those words haunted Daniel for days afterward. He walked through crowded streets watching people glued to screens, chasing approval from strangers they would never meet. Suddenly the city felt different again. Not evil, not hopeless, just deeply disconnected. And Daniel realized healing might require something most people were terrified to do. Slow down. That was the answer nobody wanted because it sounded too simple. Slow down enough to hear your thoughts. Slow down enough to feel your emotions. Slow down enough to ask yourself one dangerous question. What do I actually want from life? But Daniel soon discovered answering that question was harder than expected. Because for the first time he couldn't blame America, money, or social media entirely. Somewhere along the way, he had abandoned himself trying to become the version of success others expected. And maybe millions of people were doing the exact same thing every day, without even realizing it. Months later, Daniel started sharing his story online honestly. No filters, no fake perfection. And something shocking happened. Thousands of strangers began messaging him saying the same thing. "I thought I was the only one." But late one night, Daniel received a message from an anonymous account that simply read, "You still don't know the full truth." And attached beneath it was a photograph of Ethan standing beside someone Daniel never expected to see.